guys, Eric here. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to the new year. So in today's video we're reviewing the ACDSee's Photo Editor 12. Let's get into it. Once you do open up the program, you want to import your raw image. Now it helps that your photo is in RAW format because it is a bigger file size and you can adjust more of the highlights and pretty much just about everything within the image. And then with that, you can go into the geometry section and adjust your crop and everything. Now I like the crop how it is, but I think with this program it gives you a bit more, I guess you could say there's a bit more options in terms of how you crop your image compared to what you can do with a Lightroom, that's also a nice feature. And then what I want to do is go back to the tone area, and go to the general, and I can mess with basic things like exposure, so I want to turn that down just very slightly, -5, and then I'm going to scroll down to the white balance, and out here you can see it has your temperature and your tint just like you would in Photoshop and Lightroom. So a lot of features are pretty similar, but there are a few things which I will show that are different, but they're also like very nice features to have. So with this, the image, this was shot around Christmas time, so I want to go for a bit of a cooler look, even though it was shot during golden hour. Just bringing it down to the blues a little bit more, keeping the tint the same, and then I'll keep the strength at 100. The next feature is called Light EQ, and it gives you different modes: basic, standard, and advanced. Now with this, I just like to keep this the same in terms of my light, so I'll leave that as that. And then next, there's the color EQ, this is what you're going to see in programs like Lightroom and Photoshop, where you have your saturation, your hue, contrast, but what's new with this is there's a brightness feature. So it has the brightness of each color. So I'm just going to go through and make my basic corrections, and then I'll show you what I did with that, and then I'll also go over the brightness section because that's a new feature. So what's new about this, or what this feature right here, the brightness that you wouldn't see in Lightroom, is that it's pretty simple in that it affects the brightness of the colors. So if you look closely for the red, if I were to lower it, you can see it adjust pretty darkly there, and then right there the reds get higher as well. But with that, I like the image just how it is right here, so we can move past the color EQ and go to the color wheel. So once you're in the color wheel section, as you can see, as you are touching it or moving it around, you can see what part of the image it's looking at. So right now, as I'm over here, you can see all the blues, and you can see where the blues are within the image right here. And if I go more here, you can see the cyans, and then right there about it, the greens, which is all the grass in the field, yellows, which are in the golden hour sunset, a little bit of the grass as well. Move more over here, now you're starting to see the orange, which was in the sunset over there, and then go over the way around to the reds, which is visible in a little bit of the skin and also the background as well. And with that, you can adjust things such as the saturation and the hue, the brightness for just those specific colors, which is really nice because you can pretty much adjust any color within this, and it just separately adjusts smoothness, saturation, hue, brightness, and contrast. And that's a really nice feature that this program has that isn't on Lightroom. So I think that is really worth it, and if you really want to get very specific about your color changes within your image. So for example, if I want to go over here to the blues, since there's a lot of blue visible, and I can mess with the saturation, I can lower the saturation because as you can see, there's a lot of blue within the hood, and as I lower that, there's not too much blue within there, and that's what I overall want with the image. And this is overall just a great feature, as I mentioned, to have. With that, you can just overall change your image, that just do certain things that you weren't really necessarily able to do as easily in Lightroom, and this is just a really easy feature that you can use, and you can go around and adjust just about every color within the color wheel. And with that, it's just really a great feature to have. So moving past the color wheel, we have the tone wheels. So the tone wheels are pretty similar to what you have in programs like Lightroom CC, where you can adjust the highlights, the midtones, the shadows, and also the further you go more towards the outside, the more saturated the color becomes, kind of like you would see in Lightroom. So with these images, I'm not going to adjust them too much. I'll keep them similar to the middle, just because I don't want my images to be too saturated. So I'll keep that for the highlights there. Now for the midtones, I'm going to go a little bit over, let's see, I'm going to get a bit more to the red section, because since it was golden hour, I kind of want a bit of the red and the orange. And then for the shadows, I'll adjust slightly towards there as well. Now as you can see with that, it gives off more of the orange and the red on him in the image, because this was during golden hour. This was about 10-15 minutes before the sun was fully set, and this is what I want to convey in the image, is that we were out during the sunset. So, but with this, it's really nice. I mean, this is just similar to what you would see in Photoshop and Lightroom, but it's still just a good feature to have in here as well. Moving on, we have the tone curves. Now this is just about exactly what you would see in Lightroom, where you have your RGB sliders and then your individual red, green, and blue sliders. So for this image, it's just about like all my images. I don't really adjust too much for the sliders, so I'll usually bring the highlights up a little bit and then bring this down just slightly, because with that, I don't really want my images to be too dark in the shadows or the blacks as well. And usually I just create a slight S-curve within my image. And then if I wanted to, I could go into the reds and adjust those, greens, and the blues. And also, if you want to see the before and after of any edits, you just click this little blue circle, because that's the before, and then once it's blue, that's the after of what you added to the image. Now the next feature, which is really nice to have in this, is called soft focus. Now this is really good for portraits, so you can strengthen that and it just softens your overall image. I'm not going to use this too much, just because this isn't necessarily a proper portrait where it's the full-on person's face or the close-up of them, so I just had it as 6. But if you're doing headshots, for example, you'd want this to be a lot higher, just because you get a softer image and smoother skin tones on the face of the person. So that's a great feature to have with that. I'm just going to leave it as it is for right here, and then after that we can move on from there and go to the effects. So with the effects, it's kind of interesting. I don't personally use these effects, but obviously everyone's different, so you can select that and it gives you different features, all different types of different looks for your image. I am not going to use this because this is a portrait, so I'm just going to uncheck that and leave my image how it is. But it's a great feature to have in case you were looking for that. And if you want to do some different type of abstract edits as well, this is what a good feature for this is for. And you can also down here add grain to your image, similar as you would with other programs, but I don't really want to add the grain features here because I don't really like my images too grainy. I kind of like them as sharp as possible. But if you were going for more of like a film look, for example, that's when you could throw in some grain. But so moving past that, we have the color Luts. I don't have any Luts besides the standard ones, but as you can see, it adds it's pretty much just a basic, it's pretty much a preset in a sense, whereas they have a film look, a golden look. I guess you could use this for golden hour, for example. You have a few other options, but with that, I'm not going to keep that. So I'm going to move past that and go to the split tones. In the split tones, this is what you have in Lightroom, where you have your highlights and your shadows, and then you have the hue and saturation for both of those. So I can adjust those a little bit. And I'm going to leave the shadows how they are. And then you also have your balance down here as well. So I'll increase that a little bit. And then past that they have vignette, which I'm going to leave that as it is. And then they also have the output color space, but I am not too sure what this is, if I'm being honest. It looks like, yes, I'm not fully sure what that feature is right there, but it is not important for me in this image. And then to finish off the image, you can go over to detail, and this is where you can work on your sharpening for your image. Now, since this was shot during golden hour, my shutter speed was high, but it wasn't as high as I like to be, so you can see there's a bit of noise right there. So with that, I can lower it, and as you can see, it's getting rid of a lot of that noise there, whereas if I were to increase it, you can see it's just super fuzzy and grainy over here, and that's not overall what I want in my image. So with that, I can just lower that down to about 5, and with that, we are pretty much done with our image, and we can close out of that. This is a new program, and with that, there's still testing out new things, and if you go on their website, they'll keep you updated on new features and new things to look out for. With that, as I mentioned before, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. Hopefully you found this video somewhat helpful if you wanted to learn more about this program. But yeah, be sure to drop a like and subscribe if you're new. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one.